Eric Shapiro in beautiful Encino, and you're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel. Open wide.
We have one card on C.
Okay, so let's move for approval of B, D, E, and F.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's go with C, the comment card on C.
The comment for C is Michael Novick.
Mr. Novick? Michael Novick? We haven't done A. We'll do A after.
Yeah, this is a donation of something called the Covert Track Service. I think that LAPD is involved in too much covert tracking already of people. They have this whole architecture of surveillance that the Stop LAPD Spying coalition has presented to you over and over again. And so I think that you really need to reconsider accepting a donation of a covert track service. I believe it's related to tracking people through GPS. There's a New York Times has been running a series this month on the question of privacy and the use of Google's location tracking by law enforcement around the country. I think you need to take a step back and reassess the role of the LAPD in participating in that type of program, using that type of data on people. I think it is part of an attempt to not just criminalize, but surveil people in every detail and data of their lives and transform that into investigative, illegitimately targeting people and creating a mentality of fear in the population as a whole. So I urge you to cancel this donation and rethink the whole covert tracking program.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion for approval?
Yes, I will so move that.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to go to 1A. We have a commissioner question, and then we'll take public comments on 1A. Commissioner Decker.
Right. So who from the department can you come forward? Whoever from the department is
Chief
going
Franks
to speak on.
and Captain Tippett on item 1A.
Morning.
Morning. John
Good morning,
Tippett, Commanding
Commissioners.
Officer of Metropolitan Division.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deputy Chief Horace Frank, Commanding Officer, Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau.
Good morning. Due to the size of this particular donation, I'd like a deeper understanding of what's being asked of the Commission, what exactly are we voting on, and because this is very specialized equipment, why our budget is not capable of funding that. I should say the department's budget.
Commissioner, I'll let Captain Tippett go into the details, and then I'll fill in as necessary.
So the donation is for 160 pistols and valued at $276,952 from Sig Sauer. With the pistols that we currently have are Kimbers, and they've been around since 2002, a great majority of them. 147 actually were taken in at that time. June 2007, we took in 39 more. Many of these pistols are well beyond their life expectancy. To be exact, some of them are 4 times the amount of their life expectancy that they would be expected from. We have to take them apart after a certain amount of rounds and replace the various parts. Some of them are no longer functional, and so we're due up, and we're hoping to put that into our budget. It goes well beyond anything that we have set aside for our budget, so this donation will actually come in very handy for us. There is no commitment or any expectation from Sig Sauer from us. This is just a donation that they want to give to LAPD. Those weapons will actually be assigned to the department, not to the individual SWAT officers. They are very specific for SWAT division or SWAT platoon only. They are not for all Metro officers. All SWAT officers carry two 1911s. One of them is set up for regular on-duty use with uniform, and the other one is a tactical weapon that is actually used for doing searches and mounted with a light and a rail system, so that there's 70 approximately that are assigned to that unit. So with two pistols each, that'll be 140. That'll give us 20 extras for those pistols that fail or need to be loaned out for replacement or during repairs.
And Commissioners, I should add that this pistol has already gone through the test and evaluation process for the department and has been approved by the department.
And Commissioner, if I can just weigh in, the last issue, I believe your question was why existing department resources or budgetary means could not achieve this. Unfortunately, this, as well as a number of other equipment needs, are ongoing open requests and prioritized through our budgetary process, and it comes down to simply the inability of the city to meet all of its needs. This request has been in our budgetary process repeatedly, as has been a number of other equipment items, such as our explosives units, replacement of bomb suits that range just under $1 million, I believe, and are out of warranty. So these donations via the foundation, and in this instance directly from the manufacturer, we look at carefully to ensure that there's no quid pro quo, but at the same time we look at them with some reception because these are material needs in the sense of our day-to-day operations.
Thank you. And typically when something is procured, I just want to go back to the point you were making, Chief Frank. When these are procured, the department comes up with the specifications it needs to perform its duties. I just want to be assured that you are in fact confident this meets the needs of what you envision for the SWAT team.
Yes, Commissioner. The test and evaluation process was conducted by Training Division on this particular platform and also by SWAT, and it definitely met the needs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Can you give just a little bit more context or background on the manufacturer and how this kind of donation comes to bear? In other words, did they approach the department and say, hey, here's a bunch of new pistols? Did we approach them with a potential need? Is it an existing vendor, or what? Just give us a little more background in that regard.
Yeah, Commissioner. Initially, once the department began the process, when SWAT began the process of looking for a replacement for the Kimber, this was one of the platforms that they were looking at, and they began the test and evaluation process on this. Once that process was completed by SWAT, we submitted to the department. Training Division then went ahead and picked up this particular process again and went through that test and evaluation because they were looking for it with regards to outfitting the rest of the organization with a similar pistol, not this upgraded model, but a similar pistol.
Chief Frank, can you talk about the competitive process that evaluation process involves? In other words, is this a sole source, or what are the other manufacturers who were considered?
No, this was not a sole source. Thanks, Chief. This is not a sole source. There are 5 other vendors that were being looked at, and I don't have the names of those vendors, but there are 5 other vendors that were looked at. It was during this process that Sig Sauer approached the department and said, hey, we've been donating weapons, not just to the military, but to other organizations for quite some time. We would like to make this donation to the LAPD.
They were one of the 5 that you mentioned?
Yes.
Yeah.
And how did they perform in the evaluation by both Metro as well as Training Division?
Both Metro and initially SWAT and then Training Division, they determined that this particular, based on the needs that the organization had set forth, that Sig Sauer certainly was the one that was the most appropriate for the organization in terms of the needs that we'd already set forth, in terms of what we were looking for on this particular platform.
And this particular donation then addresses the need, or is there some further or continuing need notwithstanding the donation?
Well, it does address the need that we have to replace the Kimber, and it certainly met the need in terms of what it is that SWAT was looking for in terms of this particular platform. It absolutely does address that need.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I may, this need was something that actually came up a couple years ago. So the testing process began back in 2017 where they saw a need for it. So we are well beyond that effort. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have public comments on 1A?
Yes, sir. We have 6 cards.
Okay.
We have Michael Novick, Adam Smith, and Bill Watkins.
Michael Novick.
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying here is that the department has been trying to get these weapons from the city, have the city pay for it, and despite the fact that the city pours probably more than half of its operating budget every year down the gaping maw of the LAPD, they didn't go for this one. They don't want to spend taxpayers' money on it. So to me that says this is not a need, it's a want, and you satisfy the wants of the LAPD, they're endless. So I think that what you're talking about is that this is a rough estimate. It's $1,500 per weapon. You got 160 weapons for over $250,000. So I think that maybe people who refuse to accept this as a need or a valid expenditure of taxpayers' money were right in the first place, and you shouldn't allow the department to do an end run around it. How many SWAT teams are there in LAPD? If there's one for the Metropolitan Division, I thought there was just a SWAT, LAPD SWAT, but apparently you have multiple SWATs inside the LAPD. So how many needs for $250,000 at a pop are there to arm the LAPD with more tactical operational pistols, TAC ops? So I think that this is an example of the militarization of the police. 6 Hour also makes weapons for the military. I think that it's invalid, inappropriate, and unacceptable, and you should reject this donation.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Adam Smith.
Good morning. When I was thinking about Sig Sauer and SWAT, I was thinking about Eric Garcetti, our mayor, who generally plays himself, but actually played himself in a episode of the TV show SWAT. So he plays himself all types of different ways. But I know that LAPD apparently doesn't have anything to do with the TV show, but I also noticed that the SWAT TV show uses Sig Sauer, and I'm wondering what kind of, you talk about no quid pro quo for these donations, but they're getting something, they're getting some kind of business from giving $300,000 worth of weapons to the LAPD. I think, one, it's problematic that we're giving any dangerous weapons to Metro Division. I don't care if it's specifically just for SWAT, but we know Metro Division deals in racial profiling. The data tells us that. I don't know if it was who up here said it, but, we always hear like the wording around how SWAT was started for barricaded suspects and dangerous hostage situations, but the captain or whoever spoke earlier up here said it himself that a lot of these are used during searches. So do you, as the police commission, know which of these weapons are being used in barricaded suspect or hostage situations, and which ones are being used for supposed searches, and what are they searching for? Because do we really need to tactically, militarily arm people to search when you're probably talking about drugs? Drug problem isn't a military problem, and we should reject this donation. I mean, we do, but you all should too.
Thank you.
Bill Watkins, followed by Jonathan Foster, Gina Viola, and Melina Abdullah.
Good morning. Nice to see everyone. I pray not just to the Christian God I follow in the Bible, but the native Great Spirit for a peaceful meeting, and I pray that love wins out today. And we just continue to try to love in the spirit of Martin Luther King, who stressed nonviolent resistance as a way to make great change that lasts and that doesn't leave resentment in the end. It just continues the fight. I think. Can I have my time? I have my time back, please.
You'll get your chance to talk during public comment, but it's his turn. So please don't disrupt him. If you disrupt him, you're disrupting the meeting. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like my time back. Thanks, and I appreciate everyone's point of view. I work for this 2 minutes, as President Soboroff said. Getting to a point, the mayor brought in Mr. Johnson, and de-escalation became a policy for which I'm really grateful. I think we've made great improvements. Thank you for your letter. This is not fair to a speaker to be interrupted in the public. I hope the
If the meeting gets, if we can't hold the meeting because it's disruptive, we'll just go into closed session.
I love you guys, and I respect everyone in the room. I'm sober 17 years. I was a dirtbag criminal. I've made amends. My relatives shot people starting in the 1600s. They came.
Stay on.
The topic is guns, sir.
Okay.
We brought them, the British and the Spanish, white people brought them. They were not here. What I'm asking the commission and the chief and everybody and the mayor and everybody here is to rethink firearms, to rethink guns, to rethink this whole thing. And what I did to do so, sirs and ma'ams, was to take a hike, to go off and to meditate and to get away from this civilization. With this civilization we brought a great sickness and we brought great violence. I want everyone, my prayer is that we all pause and rethink these tactics and this war we're waging on our populace. That's why we kicked the British out. They were waging war in our streets. I don't want you to wage war here anymore personally. I love you guys, and we can do a lot better. We just got to rethink the way we've been doing things. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster, and I'm hoping that the organization Sig Sauer would come up with the net guns so we don't have to shoot people that maybe have knives. I understand they shot a guy with a sawed-off shotgun. I think I probably would have shot that guy too. However, it'd be real great if they gave $200,000 or so, what is it, $276,000 in net guns, and gave you guys some head-to-toe body armor. So let me tell you what, the budget is rigged so special. This is your answer, Eileen. The budget is rigged so special donations can be made by special people and organizations. This allows Sig Sauer to sell product that may not move otherwise. So this company gets a visibility and it helps sell its product. The way the tax structure, Eileen, is set up is always inappropriately bound to taxation, where rich people get a better tax break than the individual or married couples. And with the current tax rate, actually, with real hourly wages, if they went up to where they should be, about $45, $50 an hour minimum wage, the tax rate would produce double the level or triple the level of tax income, and more money could go to all functions of government. Seems like you don't know this. You worked in the Fed for D.C., you don't know this. This option goes around the people, though. It goes around the public, and then the people are not heard. This is a private relationship going on with a public service. And it seems that no one is listening to the public. Thanks.
Next speaker, please.
So you're talking about taking a donation for a department that already gets 54% of the city's operating budget. Within that 54% of the city's operating budget, you can't purchase what you need. You need to take exorbitantly large donations for weapons for a division that is already notorious for shooting unarmed black people in the back. How is taking almost $300,000 in weapons de-escalation? How is that? This is in one of your presentations today. It's all about de-escalation. If you are to take $300,000 in weapons for a division that we already know to be very racist, that you've had to dismantle 2 of the predictive policing programs because it's so racist, and now you want to arm them with further weapons? That's terribly irresponsible, and you're basically putting into motion more unnecessary deaths. Reject this donation. I know that you will vote very quickly, aye, right in front of us, even though I would venture to guess the majority of us in this room would ask you to reject this.
Thank you.
Melina Abdullah, please.
The last speaker on this item?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I just first want to say how fucked up it is that the family of Brian Rodriguez has to sit through the entire meeting before you rule on his murder. I think that's another trauma that you're inflicting on his family. That's terrible. Your policy is terrible. On this item, we already know that all three of you are going to vote to accept guns to go to Metro Division that you already know is over-policing black communities, that is already terrorizing black communities. I had to triple check with folks. I was like, to Metro Division? It's terrible that you're taking these guns, and we know that the corporation is getting something out of it because corporations don't give anything without expecting something in return, right? But I had to triple check. Metro Division, the same Metro Division that just a couple of weeks ago, we found out is policing black people at 5 times our population share. You want to better arm Metro Division? You should rethink that. We know that you won't, but we should all keep track of what it is they're doing and how they are just a rubber stamp body for the police that continue to kill and abuse our people.
Thank you. No more speakers on 1A?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of item 1A, which is to receive the report, transmit to the mayor and city council for their ultimate acceptance.
I so move.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay. Are there any opposed? No, they're not. We'll go to item number 2. Item number 2 is a verbal presentation regarding the use of force year-end report.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My name is Captain Jonathan Tom. I'm the Commanding Officer of Critical Incident Review Division. I would like to introduce my team who will be co-presenting on the presentation of the 2018 Use of Force Year-End Review. Lieutenant James Wang to my left will be providing an overview of our 2018 OIS incidents. Sergeant Maurice Gobriel to my right will be providing an overview of our 2018 non-categorical use of force incidents. Officer Alan Flores to the left is one of our team leaders for the year-end review report. Will be demonstrating how to access the report online. As you know, in 2015, the department published one of the most comprehensive and detailed publications on the use of force statistics that have ever been released by a local law enforcement agency. We call this report the Use of Force Year-End Review. The report is an annual 5-year comparison study now released in its 4th edition. Its purpose is to serve as a platform of measurability and analysis of the department's use of force occurrences, and it is a vital part of our self-assessment process. Through this report, the department reaffirms its commitment to transparency through the sharing of information with the public. The use of force by members of law enforcement is a matter of critical concern to the public and the law enforcement community. The department's guiding value when using force is reverence for human life. Consistent with this value, our use of force policy dictates that officers shall attempt to control an incident by using time, distance, communications, and available resources in an effort to de-escalate the situation whenever it is safe and reasonable to do so. In 2018, the department made significant changes to policy and continued its focus to provide scenario-based training with an emphasis on de-escalation and command and control. We believe the ongoing training and changes in policy are having a positive impact as the 2018 use of force statistics tend to show that we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, so let me stop the meeting again, okay? The officers are going to make this presentation, and then the public will have a chance, one at a time, to take 2 full minutes without interruption. So that is your last warning before I ask you to leave, and if you don't leave, then we'll just recess the meeting into closed session. So if you can't give the people sitting to your left and to your right the respect of allowing them to speak, then we'll just not have the meeting today. It's fine with us. We'll go right to closed session. Go ahead, guys. So that was your last warning. You. I don't know your name. Go ahead.
In 2018, the department made significant changes to policy and continued its focus on providing scenario-based training with an emphasis on de-escalation and command and control. My team will be presenting in more detail, but I would like to start with an overview of some of the significant statistics. Department personnel contacted over 1.7 million people in 2018, which was approximately 86,000 or 5% more than in 2017. Over 1 million of those contacts occurred as a result of calls for service. 43%, or approximately 754,000 of the total public contacts, were the result of an observation-related field detention. 5%, or approximately 92,000 of the total public contacts, resulted in an arrest. 0.12%, or 2,187 of the total public contacts, resulted in a use of force. 97%, or 2,126 of those, were non-categorical uses of force. As compared to 2017, there was almost no change from the total number of non-categorical uses of force. However, taser use was down 46%, and the use of the beanbag shotgun and OC spray were each down 38%. Non-lethal force was up 4%. Non-lethal force is everything from firm grips resulting in an injury or complaint of injury to body weight takedowns and strikes. Additionally, injuries to suspects were down 7%. 3%, or 61 of the total uses of force, were categorical uses of force. Those categorical uses of force were comprised of 7 in-custody deaths with 2 pending possible reclassification, 7 animal shootings, 6 law enforcement-related injuries, 4 unintentional discharges, 2 head strikes with impact weapons, 1 carotid restraint control hold, 1 canine contact resulting in hospitalization, and 33 total officer-involved shootings, which was 0.002% of the total public contacts, as compared to 0.003% of the total public contacts in 2017. The number of officer-involved shootings was the second lowest number of the last 30 years, and as compared to 2017, there was a 25% reduction in the number of officer-involved shootings from 44 to 33. There was a 56% reduction in the number of officers discharging their weapons from 110 to 48. And there was a 49% reduction in the number of total rounds fired from 491 to 250. In 2018, the department continued its commitment to training and policy development with a focus on our guiding value of reverence for human life. The department integrated the topics of procedural justice, which is internal and external fairness and equity, into 34 courses, and the concepts of de-escalation as encapsulated in the patrol acronym into 58 training courses. Some of the training courses with both concepts incorporated into them were integrating communication, de-escalation, and crowd control, also known as ICDC, which utilized scenario-based training to review and reinforce de-escalation techniques, communication strategies, and management of crowds. As of today, approximately 79% of the department has completed this training. Over the last 3 years, the department trained approximately 2,400 police officers in a course titled Mental Health Intervention Training, also known as MHIT. 83% of those officers were assigned to field assignments. The course equips officers with an enhanced ability to recognize the symptoms of mental illness and provides them with knowledge and strategies that are meant to assist them in successfully resolving these incidents. The course is mandatory for all new officers prior to completion of their probationary year in the field, and priority is also given to officers assigned to specialized assignments such as MEU, the Mental Evaluation Unit, RESET, Resource Enhancement and Services Enforcement Team, and HOPE, Homeless Outreach and Proactive Engagement Teams. Lastly, through 2018, the department had over 1,000 officers with 1 to 3 years experience complete the Police Science and Leadership courses, also known as PSL 1 and 2, which were designed to bring entire classes back together to focus on procedural justice, implicit bias, communication, empathy, legitimacy, guardian versus warrior mentality, use of force, and de-escalation. In mid-2018, the doctrine of command and control was established and reinforced through a training video that was distributed department-wide. The concept of command and control was designed to assist personnel with efforts to contain, de-escalate, and minimize the negative impact of an incident. Command and control is the use of active leadership to direct others while using available resources to coordinate a response, accomplish tasks, and minimize risk. This policy placed the initial responsibility for command and control on the senior officer on the scene. Additionally, in mid-2018, the policies on the use of less lethal force options, which are 40mm launcher, beanbag shotgun, taser, OC spray, and baton, were updated to include a requirement for personnel to exercise de-escalation techniques and seek voluntary compliance from suspects and subjects. It also provided a caveat that less lethal force options are only permissible when suspects and subjects are violently resisting arrest or pose an immediate threat of violence or physical harm, and added a requirement that officers consider the severity of the crime versus the governmental interest in the seizure, and whether the suspect was actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest. Also in 2018, the department approved the critical incident video release policy, which directed the release of videos related to critical incidents within 45 days of an incident. The purpose of the video release policy was to increase transparency in order to foster greater public trust by releasing relevant video of the actions and events leading up to and including a critical incident. These videos have not only served to inform the public, but are used by our own personnel and law enforcement officers from around the country to identify and reinforce best practices as they relate to critical incidents. To date, there have been 28 critical incident videos released to the public. Lastly, although the weapons other than firearms protocol was introduced in late 2017, in 2018 the department continued to educate our personnel and stress the importance of de-escalation during potentially critical incidents involving persons armed with edged weapons and blunt instruments. This policy mandated the assignment of a field supervisor and officers equipped with a beanbag shotgun or other less lethal device to respond to all calls for service involving persons armed with edged weapons and blunt instruments. The policy also reminded officers to utilize the techniques described in the patrol acronym to reduce the intensity of the incident. I will now turn it over to Lieutenant Wang for an overview of our officer-involved shootings.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant James Wang, the officer in charge of the Categorical Review Section at Critical Incident Review Division. I'm going to present some more details of the statistics and analysis regarding the officer-involved shootings which occurred in 2018. In 2018, we saw a total of 33 officer-involved shootings, or referred to as OISs. Of those, 24 OISs involved suspects being struck by gunfire. 9 involved no suspects being struck by gunfire. This total of 33 is the second lowest number of OISs we've had in the last 30 years. 2018's total was also 19% below the previous 4 years. Looking at a breakdown of persons involved, the ethnicity of the suspects, we find that Asian Pacific Islanders accounted for no suspects involved in OISs. Black suspects were 10 of the 33, or 29%. Hispanic was 19, or 54%. White was 2, or 6%. Other was 3, or 9%. And unknown was 1, or 3%. All suspects involved in the OISs were male. We look at a breakdown of the ethnicity of the involved officers. We look at a total of 48 officers involved in the OISs for 2018. 5 of them were identified as Asian Pacific Islanders, or 10% of total officers involved. 1 black officer at 2%, 2 Filipinos at 4%, 26 Hispanic, which accounted for 54%, and 14 white at 29% of the total. Some statistical highlights from the 33 OISs that we've had in 2018. We had 11 less OIS incidents than compared to 2017, which is a 25% reduction. 2017 had 44 OISs. We look at the total number of officers involved. We had 48 total officers involved in 2018, which represents a 56% reduction of the officers that were involved. We look at the total number of OIS incidents. 18 incidents, or 54% of all OIS incidents in 2018, involved a total of 1 to 5 rounds being fired by officers during the incident. Looking at suspect weapons, 77% of OIS suspects were armed with either a firearm or edged weapon. 36% of OIS incidents, or 12 out of the 33, involved a suspect firing at the officer or at another person. Where does the LAPD hold in relation to the rest of the country? We did a statistical analysis of the top 6 largest local law enforcement agencies, which included the Los Angeles Police Department, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, Chicago Police Department, Houston Police Department, Philadelphia Police Department, and the New York City Police Department. The LAPD had the largest reduction in the number of OIS incidents, with 11 less incidents than the previous year. An analysis of the geographic locations of OIS incidents revealed that Operations West Valley Bureau had 12, which marks a decrease of 1 incident, or 8% reduction. Operations South Bureau had 11, which marked an increase of 5 incidents, or an upward movement of 83%. Operations South Bureau had 7, which is a decrease of 5 incidents from the previous year at minus 42%. Operations Central Bureau. Operations West Bureau was 3, and that accounted for a decrease of 6 incidents at 67%. Looking at the source of activities for the 33 OISs that occurred in 2018, 18 resulted from the dispatch of a radio call, or 55% of total OISs. 14 were from officer observation activities, or 42%, and 1 was from a pre-planned incident for 3%. We're looking at the department that had a total of 48 officers involved in firing of their weapon systems. The assignment of the involved officers were 31 were coming from patrol operations, which accounted for 65% of the total officers involved in OISs. Metropolitan Division had 8 officers involved, which was 17%. Specialized sections had 6, or 13% of the total. And our investigative assignments accounted for 3 officers, which was a total of 6%. When we look at for 2018, the officer injuries, no department personnel were killed during or resulting from an OIS incident during the 5-year period between 2014 to 2018. During that same time period, though, 56 officers were injured during that same time period. Specifically in 2018, we had a total of 9 officers injured, which was a decrease of 25% when compared to 2017, where there was a total of 12 injured officers. That is a reduction of 23% in the average number of injured officers per year. Looking at 2018 specifically, some officers had reported multiple injuries or multiple types of injuries, but a breakdown of those injuries were 2 gunshot wounds, 1 concussion, 2 sprains or pulled muscles, 2 lacerations, 3 contusions, and 2 minor injury or complaint of pain. When we looked at the total number of officers firing per incident, in 2018 with of the 48 officers and compared to 2017 with a total of 110 officers, looking at incidents involving 4 or more officers firing in the same OIS incident, 2018 had 0. So no incidents where 4 or more officers fired rounds in a single incident. 2017 had a total of 9. This tends to support the idea that we are trending in the right direction due to our emphasis on command and control, de-escalation, and designated cover officer roles. Looking at the average number of officers discharging rounds, in 2018 there was an average of 1.5 officers firing per incident. Compared to 2017, that average was 2.5 officers per incident. And this represents, in 2018, we had a 56% decrease in the average number of officers discharging their firearms. Looking at the total number of rounds fired by the Los Angeles Police Department in 2018, we had 250 total rounds fired. And that was 240 less rounds when compared to 2017, which marks a 49% decrease in total rounds being fired. Although to put 2017 in perspective, there were 5 OIS incidents in 2017 that account for 280 rounds of the total of 491 rounds fired, or 57% of the total rounds fired. We look at the average number of rounds fired per officer. 2018 experienced a reduction of 32%, with 7.6 rounds fired per officer. Comparing that to 2017, where there was 11.2 rounds fired per officer, and when compared to the 4-year average of 2014 to 2017, 2018 saw a 3% reduction. Looking at the weapon system types that our officers discharged, handguns accounted for the majority, with 44 handguns being fired, or with a total of 88% of the total weapon type being used. Shotguns were used 2 times, or 4% of the total, and rifles were utilized 4 times, or 8% of the total. For the total rounds fired per weapon type, LAPD officers fired a total of 222 handgun rounds, 8 shotgun rounds, and 20 rounds from rifles for 2018. The total of rifle rounds fired in 2018, that 192, represents 91% less rounds fired than in 2017. That is a total. That total was also 74% below the previous 4-year average of 76 rifle rounds per year. Less lethal devices were deployed and discharged in 8 out of the 33 incidents in 2018, and that represents 24% of all incidents. 5 of those cases have been adjudicated, or the FID investigation has been completed. An analysis of those 5 incidents indicate that less lethal devices were deployed prior to the officer-involved shooting occurring. Even though the OIS occurred, the utilization, deployment, and discharging of less lethal force options or munitions during this rapidly escalating and dynamic incidents indicate the officer's attempts to prevent the use of lethal force. We looked at the 2018 for various factors, and there were a total of 14 suspects killed during the OIS incidents. That is the lowest number of deceased suspects in the last 5 years. Looking at toxicology or suspects being under influence, of those 14 deceased suspects, 9 toxicology examinations were completed at the time of this report. 8 of those 9 had positive tests for narcotics and or alcohol. Methamphetamine was the most common, in 67%, or a total of 6 suspects, which tested positive for methamphetamine. Looking at homelessness status, 4 of the total 35 suspects were considered to be experiencing homelessness. 13 of the 35 suspects were perceived to be mentally ill or suffering from a mental crisis. This represented a total of 37% of the total number of suspects involved. Putting some of the following data for ethnicity of involved personnel into context, the following data is presented. City of Los Angeles at the time of this report was 3,949,776 citizens. The reported breakdown of the population of Los Angeles by ethnic group was Asian Pacific Islanders representing 12% of the population, blacks representing 9%, Hispanic at 49%, white at 28%, and other ethnic groups at a total of 3%. When we looked at violent crime reported of the suspect, the ethnicity of suspects of reported violent crime, which include homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, which totaled 4,119 incidents, the ethnic breakdown was Asian Pacific Islanders accounted for 3%, blacks accounted for 43%, Hispanic 40%, white suspects at 8%, and unknown was at 6%. Looking at victims of violent crime, the ethnicity of violent victims reporting violent crime, which involved homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assaults, and totaled 31,011 incidents. Black victims were 25% of the total, Hispanics 46%, 15% were white, and 14% were the other ethnic groups. Looking at the adjudication of 2018 versus 2017, we had a total of 33 officer-involved incidents. These are all significant events involving category use of force by the department personnel. The department has a rigorous review process for all use of force, but especially so for categorical uses of force. Department policy is more strict than the law allows, which means that a finding of out of policy does not necessarily mean that a particular use of force did not meet the legal standard for the use of lethal force. Of the 44 OIS incidents of 2017, all have been adjudicated. In 2017, we saw a total of 110 officers discharging their firearms. Of the 110, 86 or 78% were adjudicated as in policy. 24 or 22% were adjudicated as out of policy. Of all 44 cases, 34 or 77% of the cases determined that all officers were in policy. In 2018, the majority of cases were still pending adjudication, and a full analysis of adjudication will be available at a later time. At this time, Sergeant Gobrel will continue our presentation with information on non-categorical use of force.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I'll be focusing my brief presentation on some key statistical findings of the 2018 non-categorical use of force reporting. The total non-categorical use of force incidents for 2018 totaled 2,126 incidents, nearly identical to the 2017 reporting of 2,123 incidents. Some key highlights from the year-end reporting include the following. There was a significant decreased usage of intermediate force options such as impact devices, projectile devices, and OC spray, possibly as a result from the mid-year policy update reflective of current case law in relation to the application of intermediate force. 2018 showed beanbag usage has decreased by 38%, taser use is down 46%, and the use of OC spray is also down 38% from 2017. Conversely, as a result of the decreased intermediate force, we have seen an increase of non-lethal or physical force by 4% from the previous year of 2017. The increased use of non-lethal force is attributed to an increase in the number of officers involved in and applying force, likely a correlation to the decreased intermediate force being utilized by department personnel. In the incidents where less lethal force was utilized, 100 of the suspects were armed with a weapon. These situations are situations with the potential to escalate beyond intermediate force, yet did not. These incidents represent 25% of 2018's less lethal reporting. Of those, there were 46 incidents that involved an edged weapon or stabbing instrument, 39 incidents that involved an impact device, 5 incidents with a firearm, 2 incidents with a replica firearm, and 8 incidents involving other weapons, including chemical agents. As noted in the suspect's race or suspects involved in the 2018 of non-categorical forces illustrated, and is as follows: 28 Asian, 810 black, 967 Hispanic, 336 white, 54 other, and 5 unknown. Additional areas of note are that 2018 also included the return of 600 additional personnel to field assignments. As the department continues to emphasize de-escalation, we have seen an increase in public contacts, increased firearm recoveries, and a decrease in the number of suspects injured, all without a significant increase in the number of non-categorical use of force incidents. Additionally, and also important to note, 2018 showed an increase in the number of attacks on officers, increase in the number of officers injured, an increase in the number of contacts with suspects or subjects with mental illness, and an increase of suspects who were drug impaired during non-categorical use of force incidents. Now I'll turn the presentation to Officer Alan Flores.
Good morning. With your approval, we'll be uploading the report to LAPD Online. In order to access the report, you'll go to www.lapdonline, where you'll be able to navigate through the website. You give me 1 minute, we'll pull up a copy of the website here for you.
It'll be the same report that the commissioners are given.
Correct.
Verbatim.
Exact same report.
Okay.
And it'll be available on the left-hand side of your screen right here. Currently, it shows the 2017 version. When you pull up the 2018 version, you'll be able to navigate it and read it in whole. One thing that we aim to do this year was provide hyperlinks to the various entities, as well as hyperlink in the videos. The full digital edition will be able allow you to access the YouTube account where all the critical incident videos are available.
Good.
Thank you. And we have one correction on one of the stats that we stated during the presentation.
Commissioner, one amendment on the statistics. For violent crime reported by the suspect's ethnicity, the total number of incidents for homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assaults, the correct number is 29,145 incidents.
Okay.
And that completes our presentation. We're ready for any questions that you may have.
Okay. Chief, do you have any comments on the release of the report?
Just in brief, and that is, first of all, I congratulate this team for pulling together this work. This is an arduous amount of statistics and information. The assembly of the report, framing of it, and authoring in this timeline, recognizing that it's just over 4 months ago since the end of the year, is extraordinary. So I thank you, Captain Tom. I know Chief Peters. I know that our direct reports also have seen versions of this and offered editorial comment relative to the report reflecting the organization's efforts in regards to use of force. I'm encouraged by the results this last year, and I believe it reflects the ongoing commitment to minimizing the use of force, particularly deadly force. The strategies that are identified within this report, both the executive summary and the larger report, include refinements to our policy by this board, tools and training, accountability, and transparency, all issues that under the leadership of this board of police commissioners and mine as chief of police and this team, I believe is showing results that, and lastly, I want to congratulate that the department as it recognizes that while there are times in which we fall short, and as have been reported here in prior use of force that were found out of policy or inconsistent with our expectations, the vast majority of time, our men and women are finding the successful way of resolving difficult and often chaotic situations successfully without having to resort to force in any manner. And in the millions or hundreds of thousands of instances, and in the instances in which we do resort to force, the vast majority involve very low levels of force, bodily force, taking a person to the ground, resulting in a complaint of injury. In those rare instances in which we had 33 instances this last year, which officers resorted to the use of deadly force, again, recognizing as we look back in our history as the second lowest in more than 30 years. I want to frame that our records in a count fashion only go back to 1989. And in those times, our use of deadly force ranged in the areas of 90 to 100 officer-involved shootings, well through the decades of the 90s. And this report reflects the last 10 years. And to achieve the second lowest number and to see where we're going this year, I'm continuing to be encouraged that command and control, the training on preservation of life and tools that we're providing, the systems of accountability, the transparency, the use of body worn and our ability to look back and see and also show our people how tactics work and when they fall short, I think is informing our officers and providing them the best situation possible to achieve the greatest outcome, which is safely resolving difficult situations in as safe a manner as possible, while recognizing, as we saw here, with the increase in gun violence and officers, individuals armed with firearms at the time in which this encounter takes place, that there is an element of true risk, not just to our officers but to the public that certain persons represent. But again, I'm proud of the fact that in even those difficult circumstances, our officers are striving to de-escalate and find alternatives to avoid the use of having to resort to deadly force.
You mentioned an update to this year, which you'll be giving later, but probably timely. The officer-involved shootings to date.
So I will report on the an officer-involved shooting that occurred on Sunday, just as a brief capstone to reflect how we see this trend continuing. Year to date, we have had 3 officer-involved shootings. That number last year was 11, and our 4-year average was just under 14. These are, I will caution, these are small numbers in the sense that the variability of this data are in the teens, and so I think it can be, I don't want to overinterpret them, but as was stated, more than 80,000 additional contacts last year by our personnel in the field, and seeing that basically our use of force held steady, the overall use of force, which is actually a decline per incident, and to see 11 fewer, which is 2018 represents a third less than the number of shootings that occurred in the year before.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
Can I ask Mr. Tiefenk to just give us a procedural overview? We heard a presentation today. What's going to happen today, next week? If you could just give that procedural overview.
Certainly, Commissioner. So today the report is being presented by the department. Commissioners will have an opportunity to ask the department questions. Public will have their opportunity to speak. The report will be agendized next week again for additional commissioner comments and public comments. As the department indicated, the report will be available online at www.lapdonline.org on the face page of the website. You will be able to click on the report, navigate it. Public can come back next week after they've had a chance to review it in depth and have some questions if they wish to at that time. So that'll be our procedure. Next week, the report would be approved and accepted by the commission. So today is informational, continued 1 week.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. And I note, my understanding is this is how this report has been presented in years past. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is the 4th year that this process is the same process.
Okay. Do you want to go first? And I only have some general comments because I'm going to be holding most of my questions for next week. I will note when, while my fellow commissioners haven't yet seen the full report, they've received the executive summary, so all the commissioners will be reading it in detail over the next week. But I did go online to see what other cities do, and I do have to say that in my limited comparison of other major cities, that there doesn't seem to be another police department that provides so much detail. So I do acknowledge that the department is providing a significant amount of detail about all uses of force, and I think that is a very good thing. That's not to say this report is perfect. We all want to strive to get better, but I do acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that had to go in to putting this together, so thank you all. I think the commission does certainly share the chief's views that we have to constantly improve and get better. Based on last year's report, it appears that we're in the right direction on many categories. But when you come back next week, I'm going to want to understand a little more about the why you think certain numbers have improved, why we haven't improved perhaps to the degree you want, and the vision for the next year of how can we, the department, continue to get better and strive to get better, because the chief has said many times, his ultimate goal is bringing OISs down to 0, and I think we all share that view. If we can get there, we need to get there in a logical way and in a passionate way for all the communities that we serve. So I'd like to hear your ideas on how we're going to improve. And also in comparing our statistics to other cities, I'd like to know why we have not necessarily achieved some of the success of some other cities in bringing OISs down. And it could be for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they have other programs involving mental health or drug treatment that our city needs to incorporate. Maybe there are other reasons, but I'd like to have a better understanding of the why, because that trend seems to have been around for a number of years.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great, thank you. I'm going to also, I've been through some portion of the 400 or so pages of the draft, but I'm going to continue to work through that and just ask a few questions today. Some of them you may be prepared to respond to, and others just take them as a indication of some of the information that would be helpful to have come back next week as well. And on the first one, picking up on Commissioner Decker's question about the why, we often hear in this report, as we often hear, a trend line is going in one direction or the other, and if it's in a positive direction, we sometimes hear, de-escalation must be working, or this may be working. And so I would like a better understanding of what mechanisms are in place to measure the impact of any particular policy change that's made along the way, any individual change or set of changes. In other words, what may generally tell us a correlation between some change that's made in policy and what actually happens on the street. So that'd be helpful. Second question, this is a small point. These are a couple of questions for the chief, actually, in some of the points that were made in your opening message. One is there's a discussion of the success of the CSP program, and I think this is on page 9. There's also then followed immediately by a commitment to dedicate resources to the department's core function. And one question that I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on is the degree to which CSP is part of the core function, or fits how it fits into the core function, or are these two different things that are needing to be constantly in balance in some way? If CSP on the one hand and a core function, are they one and the same, or are they two different things? Did you want to reflect on that, or did you want?
No, I mean, I'll respond. I think I'll frame this in a response that it reminds me of the conversation of what is a strategy and what is an objective, and what is a value. And I think that the core function of policing is public safety, building trust, and strategies and then community safety partnerships are a strategy or a means of which to demonstrate that the pursuit of public safety, the pursuit of building trust. And so I see CSP as integral as I see our community engagement and other strategies, whether it be forums, partnerships with our neighborhood watches, youth programs. There's a host of community engagement strategies, our volunteer effort, our police reserves. Those are all functions that go to building trust and improving the resilience of a community as to its sense of safety and its partnership and collaboration with a department that's charged with being the most visible form of our community, that being the public safety officers. So in this report, we demonstrate that by including community safety partnerships, that the policing is not just the application of force and the control of that, but that it's much richer and complex. And it has very varied components, including the selection of our personnel, the training of our personnel, ensuring our personnel are diverse and representative of the communities we serve, our sensitivities to the various communities in which we serve. So this report is meant to be reflective of the department's manner of how it approaches force as part of a more complex system of going about administering public safety with the resources we have as part of a much larger system of our community.
Thank you. And I haven't gotten to the portion of the report that speaks to that potentially in further detail, the CSP that is, but it would be helpful if there's an appropriate portion of the report that discusses going back again to the why, what we know about the effectiveness of the CSP approach and how it's fitting in, and also how that any of that data may be used to inform any of the other, not just policies, but also potentially the allocation of resources going forward.
So this report is a primer at 400 plus pages on the master report. It is not meant to be the encyclopedic version of every aspect of what I've just referenced. Separate and apart, the Community Safety Partnership Program, we're currently working with the Advancement Project and others, I believe it's the Urban Peace Institute, to do an independent study of the initial rollout and use of the initial sites of the Community Safety Partnership to the very points of measure that you're talking about. So I'm hopeful that study will commence. The data on it has already been collected, working with Commander Burt and Mr. Alican's office to organize that independent evaluation of it, to come to the very answers that you're asking, and I share with you an interest in something that is separate apart. We have a sense, and we look at raw numbers and very scale of magnitude type comparisons, qualitative and quantitative. But I think an independent university-led study on that will be very helpful to us.
Okay, thank you. By the way, while I've got you in the conversation, one other question was, there's a couple references to the broad objective of making Los Angeles the safest big city in America. Is there a portion in this report or elsewhere that that has any comparative analysis that speaks to, I mean, Commissioner Decker alluded to this also, that speaks to some progress that's being made in other cities versus compared to what we're doing here? And we don't need to walk through it per se here. It's just the question of, having seen the reference, that broad objective, is it something that we actually are
So let me look at the team. The per capita rates of violent crimes, property, overall Part 1 crimes. Is there any, did we include that in this report? In previous versions we have.
Yes, sir. It is in this report. I'm just looking for it in the report.
If it's in here, I'll find it. I'm gonna go through it. Just a couple other questions so we can move forward. A couple small points. There's a reference to the progress towards making the less lethal launchers available to all patrol by the end of 2019. Is there information here also about the progress towards that goal?
The 40 millimeter? Yes, sir. The 40 millimeter has been distributed to all geographic divisions, traffic divisions, and metropolitan division.
Okay, thank you. The discussion also was just had about the release of the critical incident videos as one coming through, still making my first full lap around on this and several issues. Was there a portion of this policy that was informed by changes in the law, or was this how much of this was driven by changes in the law and how much was driven by department initiative?
This was entirely the department.
Okay.
Foreshadowed, I believe, some of the efforts of legislators, but this is also an expectation of our community that sprang from the beginning in 2014 and 15. Looking at some events occurring on a national level, and also reflecting upon the instances of officer-involved shootings and use of force in Los Angeles, under the leadership of Commissioner President Matt Johnson, as well as Commissioner Vice President at the time Steve Soboroff, Commissioner Senator Figueroa Villa, and others to advocate for, and that's why our training policies, refinement of those that would address the issue of de-escalation as an expectation.
Okay, thank you. This goes to the portion of the presentation where you were providing a breakdown of some of the data on the officer-involved shootings. And did you reference the number of OISs that involved unarmed suspects?
Yes, sir. While Lieutenant Wang is looking for that, what I do recall is 77% of the suspects were armed with either a firearm or an edged weapon, and I know that we have the details specific to that.
Yes, sir. We have a breakdown of the weapon system that was used by the suspects. We just give us a moment here. Sir, for suspects, the weapon used by the suspects in 2018, 5 of them were edged weapons.
Can you reference the page, Lieutenant?
Sir, on the full report, it's going to be page 201.
And on the executive summary?
I don't think it's there. Is it in here?
We'll find the corresponding page there. So this is going to be on page 201 of the primary book, Suspect, Weapon, and Force. Looking at the last column for 2018, we had 5 suspects using edge weapons, 15 firearms. 2 of them were impact devices. 1 was a perception shooting, and 2 were physical force, and 1 involved a replica or pellet gun.
So I think on page 75,
yes,
on page 75 of the executive summary, you have a weapon such as an edge weapon, firearm, impact device in all 35 instances, and you'll need to explain why we have 35 versus 33. And the perception is when an officer perceives and believes that the person is armed with a weapon, and a weapon is not recovered. And then bodily force, physical force. That physical force could have included, and we'd have to look at the exact underlying data, to an effort to disarm the officer, or if the officer's weapon was the target of the offender at the time, and resulted in that officer-involved shooting or led to that.
So just to explain what the chief is referencing, on that chart on page 75 of the executive summary, it indicates that there were 35 suspects. So there were 33 total officer-involved shootings. There were 35 suspects involved in those 33 incidents. In the two cases that he referenced where there was physical force, there were two incidents. One where the suspect was attempting to take the officer's firearm, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. In the other one, the suspect had taken the officer's taser and was assaulting the officer when that officer-involved shooting occurred.
Okay, thank you. My last question, broadly, because there is a tremendous amount of data that's presented here in various ways. What are the checks that are in place on the accuracy of the data? Like, how do we know that, or how is the data prepared, and more importantly, how are we checking the accuracy of the data?
If I may answer that, the department utilized various entities within the agency to achieve the data. There are multiple databases that we access, both internally within Critical Incident Review Division, as well as with the department, if I may. Oh, wrong page. Bear with me. Application Development Support Division provided many of the crime statistics, as well as CompStat. Detective Support Vice Division provided information regarding mental illness. Internal Affairs Group provided information regarding complaints sustained and both investigated as they pertain to qualifications. OIG assisted us with obtaining data regarding historical data regarding officer-involved shootings. Training Division provided any and all material pertinent to training and what courses are taking place, the attendance rates. Metropolitan K-9 provided information regarding any categorical, all instances of deployments, fines, contacts, and categorical contacts. The Homeless Coordinator provided us with data as it pertains to people who are experiencing homelessness. Much of the data that you receive and see is fluid. The data that we ran on January 15th will be updated, and today may appear different than what it was on January 15th. And I'd like to highlight that because any information that you do request of us, it may not match the book exactly because data has been updated since that date.
So, officer, please give an example of such. I believe you're suggesting toxicology or an area that the department may not have the information at this point.
That's an outstanding example, actually. In terms of toxicology, we still have, I believe, 5 pending toxicology reports to come in. As a matter of fact, the adjudication for 2018 won't be complete until next year's report. So those are just 2 examples of data points or data sets that still need to be completed and compiled.
And there's other information in this report. As an example, towards the end of, in December of 2018, those cases are reported. The incident occurs in December, and it's still being investigated and information being compiled as time goes by. So all the information that we pulled from this report was pulled as of January 15th. So as investigations continue past January 15th and more force is either identified or more officers are identified as utilizing force or more force options were identified through the investigative process, those numbers will change. So depending on the date that you actually pull this data, it will appear different.
So you explained in some helpful detail in terms of the source of the data. But again, all these parts of the department reporting and data, my key question really is, what are the mechanisms for verifying the accuracy of the data? Are you just taking what's reported in and that's what's compiled as part of the report? Or is there any mechanism or system for actually measuring the accuracy of what is being reported in?
I got it. So, sir, there is a very rigorous process that my division is involved in We query all these databases, reach out to these other entities to obtain this information, and then all the information is basically cross-checked multiple times by multiple officers and supervisors. The process that we utilize is that we print them all out. They're all posted in a room that we have, and that basically it enables us to physically look at each one of these tables and try to compare the data sets between different tables, right? So wherever there was something that is incongruent with another one, that caused us to look into the reason for that.
I'll give you, Commissioner, this also involved senior members of the organization becoming more intimate with the data. For instance, you'll see there's 14 fatalities this last year in officer-involved shootings. 2 of those were actually self-inflicted by the gunman at the time. So there's instances in which this report may reflect 12 fatalities as a result of officer-involved shooting, plus 2 that were during the course of this engagement, a suspect shot himself or themselves. In other instances, we'll total and aggregate that up to 14 fatalities as a result of 33 officer-involved shootings. So it can look inconsistent, but the challenge that we have is the separateness of an independent audit mechanism would welcome the Office of Inspector General to be a part of this, if beyond what they already are. But we also will stand by these numbers. I think this team works tirelessly, and with systems that, given the complexity of the report, are very many parts of the organization, to tie it all together. And that's why I'm proud of the Critical Incident Review Division, is that they do tie and bring in the organization from various parts, and to bring harmony, if you will, to the data sets to present this information in a short period of time.
Appreciate that, and I'm gonna, and I accept the feedback. I'm gonna continue to think a little bit about that. I don't know that I'm prepared to say that it warrants some additional review, but it may. So I think we should get through the conversation over the next couple of weeks as we go through it, and then we can reflect on that further. That's all I had for the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have public comment on item 2A?
Yes, sir. We have 12 public comment cards.
Okay.
Michael Novick, Adam Smith, and Jonathan Foster.
Michael Novick. We're on item number 2A.
Yeah, 2A. So page 31 of your executive summary, you get to the nitty-gritty of it. Nearly 30% of the people you shot and 30% of the people you killed were black. So to me, that says that there's a problem in the city of Los Angeles, and you can pat yourselves on the back for reducing the number of people you're killing, but that's the fundamental problem, is that it's racist policing. If you look at the comparison on page 31 between the ethnicity of the suspects and ethnicity of the officers, 2% of the officers involved in the shootings were black. That says to me that black officers are far more judicious in the use of force, and fatal force in particular, against anybody in the city than the white officers. 29% of your white officers, 29% of the officers involved in shootings were white. So if you want to solve this problem, maybe you should just have an all-black police force. I want to talk about the fact you're patting yourself, you're dislocating your shoulder, patting yourself in the back in these reductions. Look at the figures on page 36 and 37, comparing to the other departments, agency comparison use of force. And you'll see that in basically, except for a couple of years where Chicago had more shootings, LAPD has more shootings than any other department the last 3 years. LAPD over the 5 years in terms of people killed, LAPD has more than any other department, except for the 1 year the LA sheriffs outdid you by 2. But this past year, 2018, LAPD killed 14 people. Now, that's more than the general average. I know that you were off the charts in the 90s, but since 82, under LAPD, for a long time, it's basically shooting about a person a week and killing about a person a month. You're still above that average, except for the shootings are down, but the killings are still above that average. But if you look at last year, you'll see the city of New York, which has a police force 3 times the size of ours and a population double the size, had 5 killings. We had 14, 3 times as many killings as that city. That's ridiculous. That's outrageous. You have to be dealing with that problem.
I'm looking at page 100, and I have some questions about the the process. I noticed that, all the players as part of the process are here today. Office of Inspector General, the Critical Incident Review Division, Chief of Police, Board of Police Commissioners. Who I don't see is the Force Investigation Division that does the initial investigation following a shooting, and they have 240 days to complete that incident. And I ask that, especially, I'm so sorry for Brian's family that's here today listening to this. And I hope that you all are cognizant of how you're talking today in front of a family that's in this executive summary. But I think it's worth knowing, and I don't know if Officer Wilkins and the Family Liaison Unit told you, but the head of the Force Investigation Unit last year, Jeff Nolte, he was recently fired or demoted in January to captain after wrecking his car and fleeing the incident. And he got demoted, but he was in charge of the Force Investigation Division last year. During Christian Escobedo's investigation, during Grishario Mack's investigation, and during Albert Ramon Dorsey's investigation, during Brian's investigation. And so you all can pat yourselves on the back and talk about decreases, but I'm seeing this all through the lens of a man who, Jeff Nolte he shot at least 6 people in his career and killing 2. In 2003, one of those incidents was brought to civil trial where it was proven that he lied about the man holding a gun. His arms were up and he shot him through the hands. And this is the person that was promoted to run this initial investigations around these shootings. So I kind of call bullshit, but I just think that it's important that we keep lifting that point up.
Jonathan Foster.
I'm Jonathan Foster, and Father God, thank you for today, and thank you for your son. And 2 minutes isn't enough, and we have a lot to say, so over the weeks I'll say some more. There has been a huge effort getting police shootings down. I was not directly involved, but it's in my heart, I agree. However, some people just don't care. Some people with a gun where someone else isn't shooting a gun. Someone with a gun out in the open is actually a problem. They may kill someone, and most likely are going to. In LA 2019, there's no reason to be walking around with a gun out in the open. I grew up with guns, shooting and hunting. All guns were put away unless needed. And I've been shooting since I was 10. There was a paragraph from the past meeting, LAPD Commission, that talked about the split-second decisions, that talked about the criteria for shooting someone, and there is many huge problems with this paragraph for the decision to kill or wound. There was a recent lawsuit changing the use of force, however. It's going to be implemented. I know that this group and many other groups have been effective in getting some policy to change within the LAPD, and they say, we did this, and that part is true. However, at the end of the day, it's only the officers that will do this or affect this. It will be the continuation of excellent service of the LAPD. However, shooting people with knives seems to have many other possible outcomes. If you had a better approach to an OIS issue, people with hands in their pockets are waving their hands around, and then they go boom, boom, boom. This is, again, a problem where head-to-toe body armor for the police would dramatically aid the police in not having to shoot anyone. And that's what I want to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next 3 speakers, Gina Viola, Akili, Mateo Nagasi.
I have to echo Dr. Abdullah's comment at the beginning about how excruciating it must be for this family to have to sit through this, especially you congratulating each other on the report that includes his killing. You really absolutely need to do something different about that. You need to have different meetings for family members of people who've been slain by police. I also want to echo Adam's statements about Jeff Nolte. He oversaw every single one of these in this report. So this report is garbage. Officer-involved shootings. You need to change the name. That is purposely misleading to the public. The public thinks an officer has been shot. When I ask people how many times they think officers have been shot, they give me roughly the number the same number of people that have been shot by officers. You need to call it what it is. Officer shoots civilian. It's still 3-digit, you can still have a 3-letter acronym for it, but stop misleading the public with officer-involved shooting. It's purposely vague. 14 of these officer-involved shootings were instigated by officer observation. Everything we've been going through this past year, we have learned what your officers observe. We have learned about your racist policing. We have learned what data-driven policing is doing to this city. And 14 of them were a result of officer observation. You cannot be patting anybody on the back for any of this. You should also, I want to echo that I'm speaking on behalf of Audrey George. She can't be here because she's in court today supporting the family of Omar Gonzalez. So one of the things you probably want to start including in this report is the dollar amount that the city pays for the civil suits brought as a result of all of these officer-involved shootings. That's something that everybody needs to know. Also, you're boasting about your 45 days released video footage. You release video footage that's been edited. Albert Ramon Dorsey's video footage was edited.
Since 1948, this department has had a de-escalation policy. That's 70 years. I know that because that's the year I was born. And it hasn't worked since then. In all those 70 years. One of the things that's missing from this report is that the people demanded and have sought different policies. This didn't happen because of enlightenment on your part. This didn't happen because y'all woke up one day and said, we've been doing this wrong. This happened because people showed up for the past 5 years. This happened because we have said your system is broken. This happened because we have said, the public has said, you can't kill us without accountability, responsibility, or consequence. And if you use Albert Ramon Dorsey, Eric Rivera, or Rishario Mack as examples of de-escalation, then your policy is completely broken, which is one of the reasons why many of us in this room are supporting AB 392, because it will change the definition from reasonable to necessary. So part of what we want to see is not only these colorful products, but the other thing is real accountability. Right. And it can start with prosecuting and firing the police that killed Rishario Mack. That would do a lot to say that you are real about de-escalation. That would do a lot, at least for those of us who don't trust you. To the families that are here, let me apologize. Lo siento. The way that we tend to treat you is unacceptable. And the fact that we would even take a police officer to make that person a family liaison is an example of our insensitivity. So we apologize. They don't, but we do. Because we will love you. They won't. So thank you so much for being here. And change this shit. This is bull.
Matteo Nagasi, followed by Paula Miner, George Bazzetti.
It's actually Mateo with an O at the end. Just wanted to straighten that out. I wanted to say, first of all, I don't believe your report because, as Bonner was stating, who's verifying this? Everybody's under the envelope of the law enforcement. So I don't believe you. I mean, you're policing themselves. Does that report include violence inside the jails by police on unarmed citizens? Like Waukesha Wilson. You're talking about Albert Ramon Dorsey. He dies in the shower at 24 Hour Fitness by the hands of LAPD. What weapon did he have? He was naked. Right? He was naked in the shower. All right. You have black people representing 43% of the victims but 9% of the population, yet you have under 800 suspects that are black. I mean, where are you getting these statistics? They don't even make sense. They don't make sense. I'm a numbers guy, so, they don't make sense. We talk about Rishario Mack shot in the mall. Chief Moore, you want to talk about all these policies, all these deaths that are in policy, and that's great. But then you wanted all of his shots to be under policy, okay? Even the fatal shot, which was deemed out of policy, He had no weapon in his hand, yet you shot him in the back. 6 times non-fatal, and then 2 times that were fatal, out of policy, when he was fleeing for his life in a mall full of people. And children were available, and baby bottles. I mean, God. I mean, where's the statistics where you de-escalated and, you know, when you clear out people, when you try to do these things, yet you fire and kill him in front of TJ Maxx. You know, LA's the safe. You want to have LA as the safest city.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Paula Miner, followed by George Bazzetti.
Having just gotten this document this morning, I can't really speak about the content in the way I would like to. But one of the things that offends me greatly is the format. It has so many pictures, beautifications, like it's a publicity document that you want to pass around to everybody. I'm not sure who it's intended for, but the use of the resources for this particular document is outrageous and offensive. Use of force is one of the most serious issues in LAPD. We are aware of that. We are extremely aware of that, especially when we're talking about use of force that ends up in citizens' death. In the time that I've been coming to this commission, and you know, I could be corrected, I have never seen a report beautified, glossed over like this one, as if there is something to hide, that maybe we should look at the pictures and the colorful charts and not look at how serious these issues are. So I just want to say that, and I did get to look at page 37. And again, Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County lead the nation in the number of their citizens that they murder. And also, I would like to talk about the facts. You know, we talk about de-escalation. We saw with the video, we knew with the facts surrounding the murder of Grishario Mack that there was no de-escalation. We need to understand that. You know, we talked about in this commission as far back as when President Johnson was the president of the commission. We talked over and over again about de-escalation. We talked about in these shootings that it should be determined if de-escalation was a choice first. And we found in the facts in the Grishario
George Bazzetti, former Director of Policy for the Congress of Racial Equality of California. I know you say you don't know me, Mr. Silberoff, but I gave you 100 officers from the Office of Public Safety when Celeste King IV and I, at the request of the officers, eliminated that police agency because they were treated like trash. And ask any of your officers here, they said it was a living hell. Well, you create a living hell for these people. I see these people here. A lot of people here have friends killed by you. I do. All are equal before the law. Last week, I gave you a legal document you're going to respond to next week on your breaking the law on...
Let's stay on topic.
I am on the
do your
topic,
other stuff
and
on
you are
during the
breaking the
public
law
comment.
all the time. So we'll go to DOJ Arrest-Related Death Program. I gave this to you. Did any of you fools read this? Huh? 1,900 deaths by cops per year since 2003 against the DOJ agreement that you've been breaking, that I have the letter from your chief. Did you kick me out of the meeting last week?
Next speaker, please.
Because I was
Off topic.
reading it. And by the way, Mr. Silveroff,
Off topic. Next speaker, please. You want to call the next speaker?
The next speaker, Clint Blakely.
You can come back during public comment and talk about... I'm going to ask you to... Okay, thank you.
The next speaker, Clint Blakely. followed by Thandiwe Abdullah, Jamie Garcia, and Melina Abdullah.
Morning, sir.
So I'd like to first start talking about page 10 of the executive summary, which talks about the role of the Board of Police Commissioners. So time and time again, we've seen the commission antagonize this community out here, applaud themselves, pat themselves on the back, while the family and friends of folks who were killed by officers have to wait till the very end, could be up to 2 or 3 hours. And yet, in the executive summary, it says that the commissioners serve as the community's voice in police affairs. How many folks out here agree with that statement? Anyone? Any hands? So that's a glaring mistake in this 100-page document right here. I also want to echo the comments about the beautiful pictures here, the pretty graphics. On page 19, we see a picture of a man with his hands raised. The officers are pointing his guns at him. We all know that a more accurate depiction of use of force would be, for example, Grishario Mack lying dead in the Baldwin Hills Mall. All right. So Commissioner Decker mentioned that the ultimate goal of the department and of the purpose of tracking the use of force in the first place is to bring the number of officer-involved shootings to 0. I don't think anyone in this room opposes that objective. However, the LAPD's actions and the the BOPC's approval of these actions suggest that that's not what they're actually trying to do. Earlier this morning, the acceptance of $250,000 worth of pistols is a direct contradiction of this movement towards de-escalation. Also, we don't know any information about the victim of the officer-involved shooting that happened this past Sunday, but LAPD's history of killing unarmed black and brown folks leaves me little hope that this killing was absolutely necessary. As long as the LAPD exists, there will always be so-called officer-involved shootings. There's no way to bring this number down to 0 without dismantling the police entirely.
Thank you, sir.
So first and foremost, I would like to correct the pronunciation on my name. It's Thandiwe. The H is silent. Second of all, I'm 15. I'm on spring break. I know many of you are balding white men, so you might not understand the idea of fun, but this is definitely not what I planned on doing with my time. But I'm still here because I have an obligation to my community that you all are not uplifting and not fulfilling on your part. So now I have to step up and take that role. A few things. Number one, on 43, I saw that robbery was the biggest black issue, apparently, for the statistical snapshot. And it's bigger than homicide, it's bigger than rape, but for some reason you all still continue to criminalize black people as if we're these like murderous, just people out here shooting and raping and killing everybody. And maybe if you guys didn't take up 54% of the budget in LA, people wouldn't have to rob folks for what they need. Maybe if you allocated some of that money to homelessness, to affordable housing, to mental health institutions, to food justice, people wouldn't have to rob folks. So let's make that clear. That's the number one thing that black people are doing. Also on page 75, we're talking about the officer-involved shooting incidents. I'd like a clear definition on what an edged weapon and impact device is. I'm pretty sure everything has edges. There's not a single thing in this world that does not have an edge unless it is a sphere. I don't know anybody who's walking around outside with a globe in their hands. So I need to know what that is because we know. I want to quote Emma Gonzalez, this is BS. I call BS for this. I don't trust the police department to give me the facts on what the police department is doing wrong. Does that make sense? Why would you tell on yourself? And so I need you, first of all, to stop smirking at me and take this seriously. Brian Rodriguez's family is here mourning a loss. And so you need to understand these are—
Next speaker, please.
Jamie Garcia. Jamie Garcia, followed by Melina Abdullah. And we have 3 late cards, sir. Mr. President, we have 3 late cards.
So I want to echo, how communities are viewed, and that's really important because, yes, words like tumors are used to describe us. They have programs where they refer to us as tumors and as hunter-gatherers, uncivilized savages. So these are actual programs that they use in our communities to target us where moments like this, where use of force happens. So you have your 4 tactics: your control, your communicate, your coordinate, contain, right? Well, we have our 3 C's: contained, control, and criminalize. Now, contained doesn't just happen because an officer comes up, stops you, maybe uses his baton, maybe just strong arms you, maybe uses his gun, maybe uses his taser. There are things that happen before that. There are things that happen before the bullet hits the body. There is a way that LAPD systematically structures itself to cause individuals to walk into a community, to see people as threats, to see communities as threat, to use and to justify violence on our communities. And that is what this report is trying to talk about. Because you're very, very correct, and I don't know if it was Decker that brought this up, but all these different statistics are descent data. Whether we were, let's see, what other data was important? What the ethnicity of the officer was, what the ethnicity is of the person that received harm. None of that will get down to the core of the issue, which is what everybody is raising here, is that there are other things that are happening in our communities that are causing harm on us. And that cannot be seen in a report like this. A report like this can't bring that to the surface. But you have these programs that are structuring officers to walk in and to automatically deem us as these tumors. So as these hunter-gatherers, as these savages. So how? And again, Michael Moore, I again, come back to that same question that I talked about last week in your legitimization, which is crumbling, which you see day in and day out for multiple years of people being here saying this is not the way.
Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Melina Abdullah, followed by Reverend Adela Barajas, Sheila, and Michelle. I can't read the last name. I believe it's Mason.
So I just want to lift up that we appreciate when commissioners are willing to raise questions. We know that this body tends to be a rubber stamp body, so we hope that you will continue to raise questions that we have as a community that you're supposed to represent. So thank you for doing that. I also want to lift up that this is a total PR tool. Mama Paula Miner made it very clear that this is a PR tool. This is something that you're using to trot around to communities to act like you are a kind, gentle police force. We know that that's not true. We know that any decline in use of force is because of the pressure that we have been putting on you. We know that it is not the result, and I want us to be clear that they're trying to lift up that the reason it's happening is because they're in our communities more. Right? We don't want you in our communities more, right? We know that the only way that the number goes down is for you to get out. We don't want you in our communities. We also want to underscore this message that they're giving, right? They're saying it's okay to kill people if they are houseless. It's okay to kill people if they have mental health challenges. It's okay to kill people because they've been using or because they've been drinking. And it's all okay to kill people who have things that are not weapons. A knife in a house is not a weapon. All of us have knives in our homes, right? Blunt objects are not weapons. That could be anything, right? So it's important that we lift that up. It's also important that we think about how they're using video release policy to assassinate the characters of our people, including Brian Rodriguez, right? So when you are editing video and then telling us what happened, that's a PR tool. We know that you lie, and we want to encourage truth. Truth telling doesn't come from you, it comes from us. We want to remind you that one of the things that you said is next week you will
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Reverend.
Okay. Thank you.
That was for you all. Public safety. A book of lies. Lies that justify your family. Lies that justify. Fuck all of it. Chair of the counterterrorism unit. Sat on the use of force board. He sat on it. Trying to spin language. While a whole
Next speaker, please.
generations of families.
Who's the next speaker?
Adela Barajas.
Okay, thanks. You come back during public comment. Thank you, sir. You don't. Next, you can come back during public comment. Sir, I'm going to ask you to come back during public comment.
Know my name.
I don't know, because I don't, but go ahead.
Why is there no due process for them to know my
Sir,
name?
thank you. You can come back during public comment. You're disrupting the meeting. I'm giving you your last warning of disrupting this meeting, or I'll ask you to leave. Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Adela Barajas, and I'm representing Laura, Life After Uncivil Ruthless Acts. And I'm here. I'm here to support the Brian's family, but also just looking at this report, I have to ask myself, ¿por qué tanto latino? ¿Por qué somos la mayoría del número aquí? ¿Qué nos representa aquí con ustedes? ¿Dónde están? ¿Y por qué tanto? ¿Y por qué no tengo la razón por la cual está en este reporte cada muerte que pasó? ¿Por qué no tengo una descripción de los mayoría del 54% de latinos que están en este reporte? Me gustaría saber por qué. Me gustaría saber quién nos representa y quién representa a esas familias que no tienen asistencia. Gracias.
My name is Michelle Manos. I'm a supporter of BLM and the families. I came late, but so I didn't get a chance to look at the report yet. But I just want to read 3 facts I pulled off The Guardian just briefly while I was sitting in my seat. Police in the U.S. have shot and killed more people in every week this year than are reportedly shot and killed by German police in an entire year. There has been just 1 fatal shooting by Icelandic police in the country's 71-year history. In the first 24 days of 2015, police in the U.S. fatally shot more people than the police in the England and Wales combined over the past 24 years. So as another speaker said, we are watching you pat yourselves on the back, literally dislocating your arm, patting yourselves on the back, talking about marginal increases or decreases in the violence by police against the community. Marginal increases in improvement. When there are facts from around the world that show that this can be done. And it is fake, and it is an abuse of power to not allow the system to be fixed, to not address the community in a respectful way, and learn from around the world. You want to compare city by city? U.S. cities across the nation are failing at this. Look at policing around the world. We can do better, and you owe it to us to do better. Thank you.
The next speaker, Sheila, followed by Jeremy White.
The amount of callous disregard that is on display here is sickening. You dared to congratulate yourselves when you should be congratulating the family of those who you killed, who were thrust into this work. The very people who you threatened to kick out, the same people who you banned from meetings for a year, like Baba Akili, the same people who you arrest and charge, like Melina Abdullah. So thank us for that decline. It is because of our work, not because of yours. You also dared to congratulate yourselves as one of the families of the 33 people sit in this room, the family of Brian Rodriguez. Think about how disturbing and heartbreaking it would be to hear that you are congratulating yourselves and the LAPD for killing less people, and yet they killed him. One is too many. Yet the LAPD is responsible for 33, and y'all are complicit. These are 33 lives. They are the members of our community, our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors. They are people. Yet you seem to forget that. You seem to see them merely as a number. There is that 33 people, that breaks down to about 3 a month, about nearly once a week. The real question is, what are you doing about those 33 murders by the police? Now notice my honest use of words. It is murder by police. It is not some vague euphemism you like to use to pacify the public and make yourselves feel better. It is not an officer-involved shooting. It is a murder by a police officer. Aside from making one of them sit in this room, what are you doing beside making them sit in this room and listen to this nonsense nearly a year after you stole their life? Aside from making Grishario Mack's family go through this for 3 weeks, let's be real here. You are a rubber stamping body, and that's evident by your ruling of accepting more money for more guns to kill more people. How many more people will die with this new amount of money for more guns? What will happen next year now that you have yet more armory to be used against our people? How about you use that money to help our community? Then we won't need your useless asses.
And the final speaker, Jeremy White.
Sorry,
The final speaker, Jeremy White.
Mr. White.
This trash is fitting because it reflects what's up here. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. The racist policies that are supported by this board are a direct continuation of white supremacist practices in place since this country's bloody beginnings. You uphold the worst that our society has to offer: apathy, ineptitude, corruption, and racism. You, Steve Soboroff, are particularly complicit. You are a perfect figurehead for this twisted police state that brutalizes black and brown bodies with no accountability and no justice. You impose repressive policies on communities of color, tearing apart families and causing generational trauma, all while reaping the benefits of gentrification and colonization. You are a shameful and pathetic example of white fragility, an outdated dinosaur feeding off of the futures of those that you oppress. If you had one shred of dignity, you would step down right now and spend your scant remaining days on this planet atoning for the wrongs you've done. Your legacy will be one of shame, your mark upon the world one of hatred and greed. Shame on you and all in this room who stand with you.
And we have no other cards on this item, sir.
Okay, Mr. Tefak. We're going to go to. No, we're not. We're going to do the family comments.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President. On this item, again, it will be back next week on the agenda. The public can access this report at www.lapdonline.org. Public comment on the item again next week. As to the agenda, I would recommend that you move forward to item 5A2 and take public comment, since there are family members here, some of whom I understand will be remaining through the meeting and some who will be leaving early. So at this time, I would recommend you take item out of order.
5A2.
Sure. Beginning with David Jimenez.
How many do you have?
We have 9.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll start
Yes,
with
I'm
David Jimenez.
I'm the uncle of Brian Rodriguez. Hail
Morning,
King
sir.
Brian, to be with his King and Heavenly Father in heaven. It's sad to say that my family had to sit here throughout this whole time to indulge, so I hope you guys hear me out. It's very sad, and I hope that you guys can put it together and tell my family the truth of what happened to my nephew. It is very sad. I also was a victim of an officer-involved shooting. I'm no longer a victim no more. I'm a survivor.
The next speaker, Blanca Jimenez, followed by Rebecca Jimenez.
am Brian's grandma, and I'm I used to support the law enforcement. I look at Law and Order, NCIS, and all that. I wish you guys would be truthful. But you shot him in the heart. You're all going to go to hell because he was a fire department at 2 years old. He knew how to spell his name. Why did you do that to him? When you aim at something, you get trained for that. You don't do that. That was not a way to take his life. You are responsible for that. It's easy said, I'm sorry, but that's not going to bring my grandson back. He left my daughter, only son, and he was my first grandson, and he had a good heart. Why did you do it in his heart? You are going to hell. That's in the Bible, whether you tear it or not.
Rebecca Jimenez, followed by Teresa Young.
That was my mom, Rebecca Jimenez, Brian's grandmother.
Take your time. You can turn off the clock.
My name is Blanca Jimenez, and I'm Brian's aunt. You'll see a lot of people here today, and I just want to take a second for everybody that's here for Brian, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you. We have Brian's grandparents here, his mother, which you can understand is not able to talk. Because how would you feel if somebody took your only child, your only son? Because that's what happened. I don't want to get in comment here because you guys have a job to do and you need to take it very seriously because it's literally life and death. In this case, the death of my nephew. We have limited information. We have only videos, basically a little trailer that LAPD put together to show us their version of what they wanted to show us as they stopped in between to narrate and to try to highlight how violent and dangerous Brian was. But I can tell you, based on even just the limited video of what we saw and what we were able to see on the news, there's several things that those officers did wrong. First of all, the first thing you see when an officer approaches Brian, he's not standing in any threatening way. In fact, he's the opposite. He's leaning up against a car. He's not really blocking them from entering to address the person that was stabbed. We don't know what happened, and we'll never know now what happened because of the actions of those cowardly officers. All we know is that he believed he was saving his aunt.
Go ahead.
The first officer that approaches him in the video that you guys show us, again, just limited of what we're able to see because we don't have the full story. There's an officer with his gun drawn, pointing this close to Brian, probably about this close, actually. Brian's unarmed at that point. He doesn't have anything. The first thing Brian asked the officer, I hope you guys have seen the video. Can you guys answer that question? What's the first thing Brian asked him? Do you guys know what he said? That's a real question. It's not like
about 700 pages of information, and we're going to be adjudicating this case afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So some of us may have not seen the video.
Okay.
So we will see the video during the adjudication.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what he said.
Okay.
When the officer's gun facing Brian, Brian asked him, "Are you a Mason?" Do you know what a Mason is? Right? I think anybody with common sense at that point would know that Brian didn't have all his faculties at that moment. That he had limited mental capacity than what he normally had. Somebody with common sense would know that. I think all of us can agree on that. much less somebody that's supposed to be trained. And the police officers are supposed to be trained. If I, as a regular individual, know if I'm a police officer in a uniform with a gun drawn, but somebody's asking me if I'm a Mason, somebody with common sense, much less training, should know that this person is limited capacity. Maybe I should back off a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't be so aggressive, because the video that I saw, the police officers were the aggressors from the beginning. In the video, the limited video that we've seen. There's a lot of words that get thrown around both in the report that you guys read and that people that have here keep saying de-escalation. That's the first thing I said when I saw this. Why didn't those officers try to de-escalate the situation? They had that ability. At one point, he's complying. He's not surrendering, but he's also not disobeying their orders, because when he's talking, he puts his hands in his pocket. The officer immediately says, "Take your hands out of your pocket." Brian takes them out of his pocket. So obviously he's complying. You have something to work with. But they didn't make those right decisions. They chose to try to use force. So in Brian's mental state, right, it's fight or flight, right? That's a normal human reaction. It's fight or flight. And Brian is a king. He's always going to fight. He's always going to fight. So he saw a threat and he fought back. At the video again that we see, he's jumping on a car, he's on a roof, he's sitting there, literally his legs are dangling. Nobody could have gotten something and just yanked him down, because he's not armed in any of this part. He doesn't get a pickaxe until way later. A gardening tool. That was called a pickaxe. It didn't look that big to me, but if, let's say, let's switch positions. Let's say you're the one with the pickaxe, right? Well, let's use the word that they used, the pickaxe. But I'm an officer, and I got a gun, and I got body armor, and I got backup, and I have all this ability. Are you going to be more scared of me, or am I going to be more scared of you? That's just common sense. And we don't even have the full video. At the very least, you guys should share with families. If you guys want to back up what the LAPD officers do, then back it up. Be about backing it up. Show us all of the video. Right? Doesn't that make sense? Because at the end, you guys get sued anyway. You guys are getting sued all the time. Might as well show it all now. Lay all your cards on the table. And if you want to back it up, then back it up there and then back it up in court. But don't keep us in the dark, because you've already taken the most precious thing we have. I want to tell you who Brian was. This is Brian. This is Brian. This is Brian. And this is just 2 days before LAPD killed him. So I want to ask if it's okay if I could leave this with the police commission.
Sure.
Just to remind you, he was the first of the next generation of our family. The very first. He was my mother's first grandson. My sister's only son. She will never know what it is to have a grandchild because of the actions of these cowardly officers. And that's what they were. And we don't even have the ability to know their names. They won't tell us their names. The only thing we know is exactly what the public knows, which is on this agenda. 1 Sergeant 2, 1 Sergeant 1, 5 Police Officer 3, 2 Police Officer 2, and 1 Police Officer 1. My mother lives in that area, so does many of my family members. How would you feel if you don't know if the killer of your grandson or the killer of your nephew or the killer of your cousin is a person that you're encountering day in and day out? Where's the basic dignity? Look at these words on the wall. To protect and serve. They didn't protect Brian. That's for sure. Respect for people. At least have respect for life. Hold them to a higher standard. It's not okay what they did. And we're going to fight them. I know I will to the day I leave this earth. Show us all of the video. Give us some peace. Because right now we don't. Just think, if this was your son, if this was your grandson, if this was your nephew, because he was more than a nephew to me, he was like a son. And I don't have any children, so it was like taking my only son. Because he was the thing I held most precious in this world. And I would have given my life for him. I would have taken places with him that night without a second thought. One of the other things that we demand, aside from just knowing at least who these officers are, their names, their history of use of force. Not just titles on an agenda. Again, I ask you, if this was yours, what would you do? It's your responsibility to hold these officers accountable. It's your job. If we were less people, these officers would have got dealt with already. But we're trying to find justice the right way. Understand the impact of taking a life. There's way more people that would have been here. But because of work or because the drive was too far, there would have been way more people here. So just individual, each one is a family, so multiply that, the impact. Chief Moore, how do you think your officers feel if you have people on the street now that have no respect for police anymore, that don't respect their lives because they didn't respect ours? It's in your best interest that you tell them that they respect life, because for their own safety. Because if their lives are on the line too, then they have to understand that's how we feel. I can tell you that these officers were cowardly. I grew up in South Central LA. But I know the area that's around there because Brian grew up around there. He didn't get in gangs in South Central, but he got in gangs when he went to North Hills. But we asked for the help at the time of the police. And guess what? They turned a deaf ear and a blind eye. I've never owned a gun in my life. But when he was hanging around as a teenager, me and my mother drove around looking for him. Okay? Bunch of adults, gang members. All of a sudden, the black and white's following me. I see my mom spots my nephew. There's Brian. Pull over. Brian, get your ass over here. It turns out it was a gang unit behind me. Nobody got out and ran after all the adults that scattered, but I went to get mine. And all I got was a female officer that comes to tell me, okay, well, he needs to stop hanging out on the streets. Otherwise, he's going to end up in jail or killed. And what I told her? I got mine. You go get them because they're adults. He's a minor. We would call. My oldest sister can attest. We would call like, hey, can you help us? His dad was killed when he was 7 years old. Somebody that was robbing him. He didn't have a father. So he was looking for him on the street, as a lot of young men do. I'm sure you guys all know that. But Brian always had a good heart. There's nobody that could tell you that Brian was ever mean or Brian ever had been the aggressor of anything. Brian was only, if anything, he'll respond to aggression. He'll protect himself and he'll protect others. He hated a bully. And he always protected those that were weaker. That's who he was. That's who Brian was. I want you to know who he was. So when you guys go in there and you deliberate and try to make a decision, which hopefully you won't make a decision without actually viewing all the video, because I would hope that it's important enough when a life was taken that you review every single piece of evidence that exists and that you talk to people. There's 2 people here that were there. Somebody could have said, hey, can you get him to calm down and comply? They never did that. Why? Because their action shows they don't have respect for life, especially if it's a Chicano life or a black life. That's how we see it, because that's how we've been treated. I used to be like a lot of people. I was an activist when I was a teenager, and I spoke on behalf of other families. And now I find myself in a position talking about my own family. Understand, we're different And this is what the police need to understand. We don't have the ability to call for backup when something happens to us. We know we live in dangerous neighborhoods. But now we don't have to worry just about the criminals. We got to worry about the cops too. Right? And now aside from that, you think we want to call 911 now? Would you? Put yourselves in our position and do the right thing. Hold these cowardly officers accountable. Because Brian's life didn't have to be taken. They could have tried to injure him without killing him. A garden tool versus guns and shotguns. Just remember that. These officers had the ability to handle this differently. When you look at the time that the call comes in, I believe it's 11-something p.m., just before midnight. Brian was pronounced dead just after midnight. So think about the lack of just patience that these officers didn't exercise. In the span of an hour, an incident can happen where somebody's life is taken. That doesn't show me that these officers show patience and respected human life. So on behalf of my family, we're begging you, do the right thing. Hold these officers accountable. And we need answers. We need to know who these killers are. We need to know their histories. We want their personnel files. We want all the video from everybody there. That's the least that you guys can do for us. Families shouldn't have to go to court or pay thousands of dollars of their own money just to get answers for equipment that we pay for with our tax dollars. I mean, just think about it for a second. We deserve it, and not only do we deserve it, we demand it from you to do the right thing. If you believe in a creator, be connected to your creator right now. So you can get guidance to do the right thing, because at the end, we're all human beings. We're all human beings. And I'm sure there's somebody you love more than anything in this world. So imagine if that person was taken from you, and then you know how we feel. I just have to end it saying, all hail King Brian.
The next speaker, Teresa Young. Teresa Young, followed by Miguel Jimenez.
Hello, Chief of Police and commissioners on the board. My name is Maria Teresa Young. And there's no statistic, there's no bringing my nephew back to let you know just the heartache that my poor sister, her only son, was killed. I respect some of your officers, and there's some that I don't. But living in the city of Los Angeles for 54 years, I'm tired. I'm tired of racism, and I'm tired of crime. We need to stand up, all of us leaders here, and do something about it. And let me tell you, I have. There's times where I step in and de-escalate. You talk about de-escalate. In that video, I didn't see any de-escalate for my nephew. There was family members there that you could have, they could have de-escalated the situation. There was no need to kill him. No need to kill him. There's no need to kill any one more life on this earth. I know you have jobs to serve, and I know that you'll make the right decision, because technically none of us in here or on this earth are God, okay? He has the power, and we need to learn how to respect. Be respectful to one another. Love one another. That's what God teaches us to do, not to kill people. And on behalf of Brian, he was a good kid. These streets definitely took him, but I never thought an officer would ever kill him. We asked for help, and mental health is real. I even contacted Sherman, our state assembly person, to let him know, Brad Sherman, that mental health is an issue. There should be programs where coming out of prison that you're transitioning, it's not enough. Thank you.
Miguel Jimenez, followed by Michael Novick and Maria Young.
Yeah, I wasn't kind of prepared to speak, but like I said, on behalf of my nephew Brian, I just wanted to be a voice to a deaf ear. A lot of you guys might not cruise around the streets in the area where we grew up in, but it is a culture. You guys have your certain culture, guys, how you guys run your business. You know, I understand that, but there are people out there who do need help. And that's why it comes to this point, because before it escalates and get that far, there should be training and tactics that can be trained for prevention before it gets to that. Before there's a crooked cop, I'm pretty sure you guys seen the steps that the people that they hang around, and it's a business. It all has to do with money. It's all has to do with money. I'm pretty sure it's job security. When the city is going haywire, there's some sense of security. You guys talk statistics, but who's doing the actual number of keeping track of the numbers? It all has to do with money in the end. And in the end, it's like one side of the coin. You choose money or life. Right. Guys chose money. You know what I mean? And this is not just for people infected in the ghetto. It goes all the way to a corporate scale. And I'm pretty sure there's pressure from all people behind closed doors that maybe you guys are never will come across. Maybe you guys have ties with them. Who's to say? But at the same time, too, we're all tied as a people. We're all connected to God, whichever way you want to call it. We all have a higher power. And we all have a choice on what path we choose to walk. Now, I keep hearing numbers, statistics. Okay, that's fine. I don't know the exact numbers and all that, too. But there's a number of all of us. There's a number of you guys on the panel, too, that can actually make a change. That can prevent a lot of things. You think a lot of people choose to live this life or choose to live that life? Sometimes, too, you're a product of your environment. And sometimes the environment needs to get changed. And if it's corrupted from the bottom, it can be corrupted from the top and vice versa. So it all needs to change eventually with love. Thank you.
Alexis Lozano. Alexis Lozano, Maria Young, and Michael Novick.
My name is Alexis Loscano, and this is Violet Carlson, and I want you guys all to take a good look at her, because Brian didn't get to. He called me that afternoon. He was excited to go to her baby shower. His goal was not to perish before, because what became of that celebration was bittersweet. One thing Brian did was believe in karma, that what goes around comes around, and be careful what you do to others, because it will always come back to you, and it won't just be to you personally. It may be to your children or your children's children. He was the first of my generation. He grew up with me like an older brother when my father wasn't always present. He was another male figure in my life, the first of us, and there wasn't another male until many children later. I know that the officers don't understand what they took, but they will. And it's not a threat, it's life. It's the circle of life. We give life, but we don't have the right to take it. Look at her, because he did not get to see her or an ultrasound. He did not get to hold her, the first of the next generation. I just hope you guys understand that when dealing with other people's lives, it's not a game. Not Monopoly, okay? You can't, Janet, you can't put the board away. Maybe when you guys go to sleep at night, you guys just think we're another face. This is just another meeting for you. Then you're gonna go get Starbucks and go talk to your kids on the phone, probably about one of their bills. say, oh, those bastards, right? It's not for us. It's not the same. When we go home, we go to sleep, you know who we pray for? Not just the people we lost, but we pray for you. So you can change your minds. This is ridiculous. Look what we have to bring. Look at how many children are here. If you haven't seen the ripple effect of what this has caused, look at the faces, the smaller faces, because it's not just hers. I want you to go home and hug your children tighter, because one day you'll be sitting in here. That's right. And when we see you and pat you on the back, I hope you understand. This is absolutely ridiculous, and it's an embarrassment, and America has become an embarrassment. Thank you.
Maria Young, Yolanda Lascano.
Thank you for your time. And again, we're speaking for Brian, who's no longer here. Sitting through this meeting, it was really hard to hear. Arming Metro, again, it is a culture. LA is a culture. You have to be reflective of the communities in order to help and serve the communities. Again, the statistics that you show on your slides, a statistic even of one is too many because it is one person. These cities are unique. LA is unique. You have to have cultural training for Los Angeles. No relocating people that were educated in Idaho, Minnesota. It's a different culture. Again, the trauma that's inflicted on the family is from leaders also in positions of authority to do things and make things happen. So because you are the leaders and the authority to make this happen, again, we do pray that you do the right thing. The trauma that Brian incurred was also in the prison. That's not a safe system. That's not a safe system. That's not a good system. He did go into jail and he was lost, but he didn't go in for a violent crime. He was never able to come out of that, and he was not given a second chance. We're so excited to have him home. We all saw the problem and all got around him and said, what can we do? What can we do to make his life better? What can we do to make him, a good citizen, a good person? The traumas that were inflicted in jail made a big impact. And that was clear from the video when he says the Masons. There's a big problem in Los Angeles County, and that's mental illness. Homelessness, did you show there's over 56,000 people homeless in Los Angeles County alone? Let's get your officers educated. Let's have them think twice before they shoot and hit a lethal target. I think that's our goal. Our goal is, again, these letters up on the board. Where's the integrity? All of us that are assigned a task or are put in these positions should be held accountable to integrity, and I want to thank you for your time.
Yolanda Lascano, is that you? Okay, Adela Barajas.
Good morning again. My name is Adela Barajas. I'm with Laura, Life After Uncivil Ruthless Acts. I'm a community advocate and a victim's advocate for Evelyn and her family. Not only am I a victim's advocate in South Central LA after my sister-in-law was murdered, but knowing that they moved away from South Central to the Valley looking for a better place for Bryant, it's really hard. As a victim's advocate, and not being able, and this is a change that you guys could support and do, not being able to provide the victim's advocate services to this family, it's really heartbreaking. Families that are touched by or taken lives by LAPD should also be able to receive the services to help the families. And somehow they're not. Once a life is taken, it is not the family's fault, and the family needs services. Becky, Evelyn, they should be able to have therapy. And if they don't have the money, they should not have to go through the county or through all these other branches where they make you take drugs before you can see a psychologist. That system needs to be fixed, and you can help me. Thank you very much.
Now we have Michael Novick and George Bizzetti.
So this is the reality behind the pretty pictures and the phony statistics in that document you looked at about the 2018 killings. This is why 40% of the people that LAPD killed were so-called Hispanics, Chicanos, Mexicanos, Mesoamericans. Why 33% of the people in the non-categorical force were people with observed mental distress and illness. It's re-trauma. I lost my oldest stepson just to a motorcycle accident, and it's re-traumatizing for me every week I come here. I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like for the family to have to present this stuff to you, but you need to take it to heart. The reason there are so many children here this week is because the schools are out. It's because it's so-called Holy Week, right? And it's the Passover season. It's the Easter season. And, that biblical story is about plagues being visited on the Egyptian Empire. But the plague that's being visited on this city is not coming from God. It's coming from you. Right. It's a plague of murders by police. And it's in your power as human beings to put a stop to it, and you better do it.
Did you have a card?
Yes, he does.
Why would you even ask Silberoff? You don't care about the law. Never have. You're just a hustler for killers and money. You know me damn good and well, and I know every little stupid move you've made, dude. I represent 117 years as the Celeste Kings, the longest run of civil rights ever in the history of man, fool, and 54 years of my own. We spent 6 years with Sheriff Baca writing every bit of legislation to fix this mess, and I've seen you people rip all of our work apart after Celeste suddenly died because you people made sure he didn't have his heart operation, dude. I was holding him up from heart attacks and strokes for 3 days, and I am sick and tired after all of these years of all the people I've talked to, like this fine family here and all the other families. Do you realize that even when a homeless person is killed by one of your cops, that 1,000 people's lives are ruined? Now, let's take how many lives you all know here, just in your family, much less the rest of them we've been here on. And I guarantee you, you fools, you can kick me out of here while I'm reading a letter where you people broke the law of Chief Beck. And your cops pushed in the back a 71-year-old civil rights leader when I walked out of here. That's elder abuse. You have no respect for anyone. You threw me into your jails, and all I did is talk to people. Killings. You've killed my friends. I saved a lot of people in your jails teaching them law, including a guy on 187. Nobody's throwing away a military man that was 6 feet from an IED who has hallucinations and went crazy and killed somebody.
The next card is for Adam Smith, and then I have a card that has no name on it.
I'll try to be quick. I didn't plan on speaking, but I just want to express how sorry I am to the family that they had to be here today and what happened to Brian. And Brian's aunt, I don't know where she went, but listening to you tell the story about what happened that night and juxtaposing it with what we hear in this room week after week when they talk about de-escalation training and how much money they're spending on training and community outreach, and Chief Moore likes to tweet about how proud he is of his troops. But I hear these stories from the families, week after week that come here, that there's not even enough time to do de-escalation. They're looking for a reason right away to make someone a threat that wasn't a threat. And so, I just wanted to come up and say I'm sorry. It reminded me a lot of what we heard about Grishario Mack, who was walking around a mall for an hour last April 10th, wasn't a threat to anybody, and he only became a threat when the police showed up and decided that he was a threat when he wasn't. So I hope that they can do the right thing for your family today, because we all know that that's the least that you deserve.
Next speaker, Amen, followed by Reggie. I can't read this writing.
Okay, I'm sorry that they killed Brian, and you notice how it says to protect and serve on that wall, but the police don't protect and serve us at all. I just thought I'd point that out. And one more thing, Soberoff, I've seen rats that look better than you.
Next speaker, please. What do you say?
I have a sneaking
Did
suspicion.
he have a card in?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other cards after this?
I believe Adam Smith. Oh, he spoke. Okay, then he's the last speaker.
Okay, we'll start your time again. Go ahead, sir.
I have a sneaking suspicion that they didn't tell you that they're working on a mental health program. I know they didn't tell you. They're trying to roll it out, not yesterday, not in January or February, March, or this month. When are y'all rolling out that mental health program? You remember? Huh?
Wow.
Huh, to thank? When are you rolling out that mental health program? You got a family right here that these bastards murdered a member of their family. And they're saying their loved one was mentally ill.
It says integrity on that wall, and I just saw him push him out of his way. He did not say excuse me or anything. He didn't say excuse me. That was rude. And you need to fix your face. Because I'm the officer of this land, not you.
Go ahead, sir.
When? When are you going to unleash the mental health program?
All of you are imposters.
When?
Doing commerce when you're supposed to be private. The land belongs to us, not to you. That's right. That's right. That's right. Right. The whole planet belongs to us. Yep.
When are you unleashing the mental health program? This family needs to know.
And you still don't speak.
No, they're not. They're not taking you seriously.
They're guilty.
They would rather kill more folks dealing with mental illness. Answer that simple question.
We have no other cards on this case, sir.
Okay, thank
Pathetic.
you. We'll go back to the chief's report. Chief?
Don't push no more indigenous people anymore without saying excuse me, because we are not allowing it anymore. And quit pushing us indigenous
Chief?
around.
Okay, so now it's this is the chief's report.
I don't care. He pushed him. Did you not see that?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to stop disrupting the meeting, or we'll just go into closed session. Okay, so this is the last warning. I can't continue the meeting. We're going to go into closed session now.
In that closed session, talk about the mental health program.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A1 and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We're back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
Mr. Teefank?
The Commission has concluded its work in closed session, as the Secretary indicated. As to item 5A1, the item was continued to next week, April 23rd, 2019. As to item 5A2, OIS 035-18, tactics, 1 Sergeant 1, 1 Sergeant 2, 5 Police Officer 3, 2 Police Officer 2, 1 Police Officer 1, all tactical debrief, unanimous 3-0. Drawing and exhibiting of a firearm, 1 Sergeant 1, 2 Police Officer 3, in policy, no further action, unanimous 3-0. Less lethal use of force, 1 Police Officer 1, 3 Police Officer 2, 2 Police Officer 3, in policy, unanimous 3-0. As to lethal use of force, 1 Police Officer 3, in policy, unanimous 3-0. That concludes the report out on this item. There will be the Chief's report redacted, will be available as soon as we receive it from the department. I know the family has been talking with Sergeant Wilkins, and he'll ensure the family gets a copy of that report, but it is available as a public record once we receive it in our office. We do not have it as of yet.
Hi, I'm Jen Mahoney in Studio City. You're watching LA City View Channel 35, where you can get the best in culture and arts. It's our city, it's our channel.
Hey, just go!
In LA this week,
it is Smokey Bear's 75th birthday.